I surrender so your world can be changed. The change I want to see must first begin in me. I surrender so your world can be changed. Let's start with that energy tonight. Just sing it with me. The change I want to see must first begin in me. I surrender so your world can be changed. The change I want to see must first begin in me. I surrender so your world can be changed. I want to jump into exactly what I want to say. And hopefully, like a good communicator, I'm going to front load you with the three things just so you can take notes. So, number one, idealization without motivation is stagnation. Stagnation is the catalyst for alienation, and true motivation is found in our understanding or our misunderstanding of agape. So I'm told today's theme is from Selma to Ferguson, and we're going to look at that. First, I wanted to say that I always honor celebrations like these. We get a chance to acknowledge all the great things that people like Martin Luther King have done. But I have to also tell you that I get a little bit frustrated. I'm a little bit taken aback, and I get a little bit emotional, because what we do is we point to the great works of those people. And we think, wow, what they did was so inspiring. Wow, what they did changed my life. Wow, they embody the essence of a leader. Wow, they. You see, I'm taken back because while it's great to acknowledge the accomplishments of Martin Luther King and people like him, idealization of what he did without any motivation is simply stagnation. And what do I mean by that? So, when the extent of our action is to point to the actions of someone else, we are immobile. I don't know if you guys heard that. When the extent of my action is to point to the actions of someone else, I am stagnant. I am immobile. That is, we stand and look at what everybody else has done, but if we don't feel that tingle, that itch to get up and do something inside of ourselves, then we are living in inaction. We're coasting on the work of others. We're coasting on the work of others. How is it that we can idealize the work of others, but never bring ourselves to contribute, no matter how big or how small? My assertion, and my opinion, and my thesis is that we can idealize because it keeps us at arm's length. Keeps us at arm's length. But if we allow ourselves to get motivated to do, that means we have to put one foot in front of the other and go. One foot in front of the other and go. And I asked Pat Price to not let me digress today because I can easily do that. Why don't we go? Because we're not afraid, we're not sure of what it is that we're going to run into. So when we start moving, when we start progressing, when we motivate ourselves to go forward, we can't predict the future. And then here's where I want to talk about Selma to Ferguson. So let me paint a picture of what it is I'm trying to say. So Martin Luther King had already given his infamous I Have a Dream speech. He had already won the Nobel Peace Prize. So there was already momentum behind the movement. And so the people in Selma and Marion could have sat there and said, Martin Luther King is going to get to us. He's going to come to our town, and we're going to ride on his coattails. He's going to come and do what he needs to do in our town. So why don't we wait? But they said no. They couldn't point at him, and they came to understand that if they wanted change, stagnation was not an option.
Why?
If they wanted change, stagnation was not an option. So the march from Selma to Montgomery, Ferguson, actually began a few weeks before the Federal Ascension March that we usually actually celebrate. And what happened to that march? It was interactive. What happened when people began to march from Selma?
Legalization.
It's not a trick question. They took steps, right? And they said, we can't fear what's over there. It may be cops, maybe dogs, water hoses, batons, but they did it anyway. They got together, they put one step in front of the other, and step by step they walked into their future. They didn't have time to wait. They didn't have time to fear. They did not and could not think about the brutality that would befall them. Essentially, what their hearts, what their inner being said was, the change I want to see must first begin in me. I surrender so your world can be changed. You guys can sing it. And here's what Martin Luther King said. We must unflinchingly face our fears and honestly ask ourselves, why are we afraid? This confrontation will, to some measure, grant us power. We will never be cured of fear by escapism or repression. For the more we attempt to ignore and repress our fears, the more we multiply our inner conflicts. So what he says is, we can't be stagnant. It leads me to my second point. Stagnation is the catalyst for alienation. And let me tell you about this one little story. I was actually really glad that the dance team had that Mary Don't You Weep song that they danced to. And it's the story of Moses and the Israelites and the conversation they had with the Creator. And I'm not going to get into whether this story is historiographic or not, but it illustrates something. As many of you have heard the story, the Israelites are enslaved in Egypt. Moses has a conversation with the burning bush. Then a conversation with Pharaoh. The plagues happen. Pharaoh says, get your people out of Egypt. The Israelites leave and Pharaoh begins to pursue them. And they're led to the Red Sea. Pharaoh's behind them. And they begin to worry. And they say, Moses, what are we supposed to do? We have Pharaoh behind us and the Red Sea in front of us. And what does Moses say? I love this. I love this. Moses says, stand still and wait to see what God is going to do. And what does God say? And I'm going to read this to you in Hebrew. Yahweh, Elachem, Lakem, Va'atem, Ta Harishum. Vayamer Yahweh al Moshe, Metitzat, El Adaber, El Odeh, Yishrael, Vaya Yasu. Va'ahata, Harem, Et Matka, Te, Adyata, Ul Hayem, Keahu, Vayahu, Vole, Yishrael, Batuk, Hayim. Anybody get that? So, Moses says, do not fear, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians you have seen today, you shall never see them again. And here's the good stuff. And we often miss this in our church services. Moses tells the Israelites to stand still. And this is the equivalent of us riding around with bumper stickers that say, let go and let God. But what does God say? And this is what I'm ready to do. God says, why are you crying out to me? Why are you crying out to me? Moses, stretch out your hand, lift your rod, and tell the people of Israel to go into the sea. They will come out on dry land. I see some of that's going on with people's heads. Why are you calling out to me? I have given you everything you need to get through this hurdle.
Amen.
I'm going to do something with the Egyptians, but you need to do something as well. And that's to go forward. To not be stagnant. So while the Israelites are stuck at the shoreline and they're fearful of not only who's behind them, but what's in front of them. And they cry out, we'd rather go back and alienate ourselves and serve the Egyptians and move forward and face what we already know. The darkness we already know. Rather than to face the uncertainty that we don't know. He tells them, you have the tools to cross the sea. You do not need me to do anything for you. You stretch out your rod. You put one step in front of the others. And you go. And what I love about this story is that if you read any of the ancient Hebrew mystics, they elaborate on this story. And we think that God parted the sea. But a lot of mystics will write this story that it wasn't, the Hebrews took one step into the sea, the Israelites, they took another, all the meanwhile, it's getting deeper. Yahweh, when is it going to be dry ground? And the mystics write that it wasn't until the water had gotten up to the Israelites' neck. That is, it wasn't until they had spoken certainty into their own future that the water began to part. I think you guys missed that. See, the only thing that we have is the only certainty that they had was the uncertainty that they had. The only certainty that they had was uncertainty. They didn't know what was at the bottom of the Red Sea, what was going to nibble at their toes, if they were going to drown. But Moses and Yahweh says, walk. And this is the idea behind Ferguson, right? This is the idea behind what we celebrate in the civil rights movement. When we celebrate Martin Luther King, is that we see that they were motivated. They couldn't stand still. They didn't wait for Yahweh. They used the power of Yahweh, but they didn't wait for Yahweh. And I'm going to leave this topic pretty soon. But when you're up to your neck and you feel like, I don't know what it is that I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I can't see what's below the surface. That's what we're called to step out. That's what we're called to just do it foot by foot, step by step. We cannot stand still if we know our freedom is ahead of us. We don't know what kinds of monsters are lurking in the midst of the sea. We can't plant ourselves at the shoreline and expect things to happen. Much like the men and women who marched from Selma, we have to go forward in boldness, lest we live our life in separation, in difference, in reluctance, and animosity. And this brings me to my third point, and I'll be out of here soon. True motivation is found in our understanding of agape. What is agape? I mean, what is agape?
Unconditional love.
You guys are talking about love, and that's the energy. What is agape?
Unconditional love.
All right, if that's the energy behind love, I feel sorry for people. I feel sorry for myself. But we have to understand something. To really be able to step out and act, our souls must be nurtured in love. And I'm not talking about the love of an intimate partner, because that's called eros. And I'm not talking about the love between friends, because that's described as phileo. And I'm not talking about the love someone has for their family, and that's usually described as storge. Agape is the love that is shared with no expectation. I'm going to say that again. Agape is the love that is shared with no expectation, without any benefit to the self. Martin Luther King and others describe agape as the most powerful creative force in the universe. And by nature, if something is a force, it is always in action. It is always moving. This force agape loves and imparts value by loving. And because it imparts value by loving, there is no distinction between the worthy or the unworthy. My friend or my foe. It's the idea behind what we call the golden rule, to love your neighbor as yourself. And King wrote about agape, consequently, the best way to assure oneself that love is disinterested is to have love for the enemy neighbor, from whom you can expect no good in return, but only hostility and persecution. This is the force and a type of love that moves a man or a woman to go to any length to restore the community around them. This is a force called agape, and it springs from the need of the other person. His need to belong to the human family. I love you because I love you. Hate me all you want. And don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that in the face of adversity, in the face of Pharaoh, in the face of teenagers being shot, in the face of police chokeholds, in ended lives, racism, inequality due to sexual orientation, ethnicity. This doesn't mean weakness. See, agape is not a weak or submissive love. It is a boldness to put love into action. It is love in action. It is the energy to create and insist on community, and recognizing that all who live within the community are interrelated. It's the understanding that working against community is working against all of creation. It's knowing that the change I want to see must first begin in me. The force of agape is our motivation. It is the only way that we can put one step in front of the other and go. It is the only way that we can cross the Red Seas of our lives. It is the only way we can make it through dry ground when our communities seem to be imploding. There's no room for idealization. Because when you live in agape and you breathe in this force, our song, the song of our lives, becomes change. We understand that our very lives need change. I live with you, I breathe with you, I join with you. Hate me all you want, mistreat me should you need, but you are my neighbor. We are connected. And even though you may have a disconnected aspect of reality to your life, I'm going to work with you to bring harmony, not just to you, but to your family, and to me, to all of the people in my immediate surrounding community, my world. Agape is standing on your feet with that inner being driving you to act on the change I want to see. Must first begin in me. I surrender to your world. I surrender so that your world can be changed. And I'm just going to ask the choir to help me sing this. And I want you guys to not leave this place not understanding this is the true message of Martin Luther King. You guys can stay there. You guys remember the words? Let us not leave this campus idealizing Martin Luther King and the many others that have gone before. Let us join them in knowing that we can affect change in our community. That through love, and through that force called agape, we're not going to remain at the shoreline of the Red Sea, but that I'm going to take that first step across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. There may be policemen, there may be batons, there may be dogs, there may be water. But I'm going to take that first step. And if you're an LC student tonight, I'm speaking specifically to you.